Let's begin our class with prayer, please.
Our Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this opportunity to read from your word together. Bless those who are here. Bless those who are watching, that we might gain something from this reading that would help us, encourage us, strengthen us, help us to love you more. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. In general, we're in the book of Genesis, as you know. And we're in the story of Jacob as he flees after he steals his brother's blessing as well as his birthright. He flees his mother under the pretense, and I don't know that it was a pretense, since it was of getting a wife from his mother's family, Abraham's family also, back in Haran. When we showed the maps, I think, where's the map? Yeah, we showed the map here that he was down in the south part of this. Let's see if I can do this again. Oh, I'm not projecting, am I? Sorry. Can you see the cursor? He's down here toward the bottom. I need to change the color of it. In this area, Beersheba, it says, where he was. And he has to travel all the way up here to Haran at the top, which is in what we would call Syria today. In fact, the Bible calls it Syria. I believe it would be in Syria. Now, along the way, he stops at near the city of Luz, which is present-day Bethel. He stops to sleep for the night. Apparently, it was late at night when he got there, and the gates of the city were shut, and so they're not going to open the gates, and so he's stuck outside. And he went up from Beersheba in the south, went to toward Haran, and he came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. He took one of the stones of that place, put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven, and there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. So he has this dream, and he sees the word ladder. We'll talk about this more in just a moment. We think of a step ladder, and it's hard to picture it going up into heaven, and there's nothing there, but could be that. The word is also used of just any kind of stairway, which they made out of, sometimes just by stacking stones up. So maybe he's been stacking stones around there before he goes to bed to make himself a pillow, and he has a dream about that. So they would stack these big flat stones up and make a stairway up to something high, like an altar. And it could be that kind of a ladder, and they would call that, same word Hebrew, a ladder. But he dreamed, and so this ladder, and he saw on this ladder, here are the angels going up and down the ladder. And behold the Lord. When the Bible uses the word behold, it's like, and look. It's kind of pointing you to something. It means, behold, something startling happened here. The Lord stood above it, Jehovah stood above it, and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac, and the land upon which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. Makes his promise again to him now, not just to Abraham and Isaac, but now to Jacob. Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, to the north and the south, and in you and your seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So even though he's going away out of this land, he's saying, I'm going to give you this land. And behold, I'm with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. So it says, Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, or Jehovah is in this place. And I did not know it. It looked like an ordinary place to him, but Jehovah was there. You know, you can make a lot of that statement. Now, Gary's correct. Eventually the tabernacle was set up here at Bethel many years later, 400 and something years later, maybe 450 years later. The tabernacle was set up here in this place. But this is true of pretty much every place we go. The Lord is in this place, and we do not know it. We often don't see that we're not out of his care. And he was afraid. See, this is the feeling people have when they encounter God. Truly, fear. The right kind of fear. How awesome, full of awe, jaw-dropping is this place. The word awesome there also means fear. All we think of awesome is, really nice pizza. It's awesome. Really good waves are awesome. But that's not what the word means, and especially in these older versions, old words. It means full of fear. Someone's awestruck. It means they're so shocked by what they see that they're just frozen. That's what awesome is this place. This none other than the house of God and the gate of heaven. So he named the place Bethel, which means house of God. That's what he named it, Bethel. And so forth. Now some people picture this, here's one painting of this ladder. I've seen many of them. See, it's kind of a stairway more than a ladder, as we was thinking the way we use the word ladder. And then you have another one here. This is a broader idea of this. Of course, I don't know that angels have wings or look like that.
Is there an idea of ladder or stairway in the Hebrew word?
Yes, it does mean something means to ascend and go up. So it can be used of a lot of things. We have step ladders. We have ladders. I don't know what we have to step on every ladder. So I'm not sure what a step ladder is, except we know what it means. It's something that has two sides. Both pieces are on the ground usually, and a ladder can be leaned up against something, and so forth. So you have this idea of just something that ascends, where you go up, stairway. It possibly is something like we would call a stairway is what I'm making. And I don't know that the Hebrew word is much more specific. But now the question is really, what does this mean? What is the meaning of this vision to Jacob? Various suggestions have been made about this vision. The most fundamental and plain interpretation of this vision is that God was saying in the vision, I'm with you, I'm communicating with you wherever you go. He wasn't at home anymore, he was on the road. So wherever he goes, God is saying, your prayers are going up, my actions and providence is coming down, there's this communication with you, I'm with you. That's the most obvious meaning of this. Then you have people that bring in from the New Testament Jesus' statement that you'll see the angels ascending and descending on the Son of Man, as it were. So they view this as a messianic vision, that through Jacob's descendants, God would be able to be in touch with man, and God would be in this place. What does Emmanuel mean? It means, it's one of the names of Christ. It means God. So they view this as a messianic dream. Jacob would not at all understand it that way, because he had no basis to understand it that way at that time. But they view this as kind of a prophetic messianic dream that God would truly be in this place with man because of Christ. And his ascending and Christ, 2 or 3 times it talks about Christ ascending and descending. You see. So I don't know the answer to which one is correct. They both fit. Ken, do you know what maybe the rabbis say about this kind of thing, or you have any thoughts on this?
No, I don't.
I am shocked. I am truly shocked.
Bethel, is this Jerusalem?
No, it's not Jerusalem. What's that?
Is this where the temple was?
No. This is where the tabernacle was assembled. Let me go back to that map there. I might can find another map that has both of them on there.
It's north of Jerusalem.
Yes.
Some, 10 miles?
If we look at this map, can you see it up there? No, you can't. How did I kill that? I might have killed it. I'm going to have to change that cursor to make this work right. I thought I had figured out something really great, and then maybe not. All right. So, here's Bethel, right here. Jerusalem is on down here. It's not that far, but Jerusalem, there was no place called Jerusalem at that time. I'm not even sure there was a city called Jebus. Jerusalem was first called Jebus, Jebus. It was a Canaanite village, and there's an outcropping of a hill, and they had an altar there probably, and built this little town around that. It was mostly known for shepherding and stuff. And then it became Jerusalem because of other reasons, which Salem means peace. And then the Joshua conquered this city. Later, David then makes it his capital, Jerusalem. So it was an ancient village, but I don't even know if it was here then, but it's down in this area right here, if I remember right. So it's not very far, but just above this is where it was divided between north and south later. This is where, and I should have put some of these references there, but from my understanding, this is where the tabernacle was set up after it was built after the conquest of Canaan by Joshua. So yes, God did, and God says he dwelt in the tabernacle. Now, of course, God dwells everywhere, but he also specifically dwelt in the tabernacle.
He seemed to make a point by filling the tabernacle with cloud and doing some things that they could visibly see, and he also did that with the temple. So at some point, he made a point of being with them in a particular place.
Yes, he says he was there. He would dwell among his people. Now this becomes this is the physical side of the representation that shows in reality God is with his people. And then in the New Testament, God is in his temple. But it's a spiritual idea. Now the other thing, this is the significance of the wheel in a wheel that Ezekiel saw later. Later in Israel's history, after the tabernacle had been set up at Bethel, and then finally it was taken down and moved to Jerusalem, to Mount Zion in Jerusalem. David moved the ark and all this problem with the Uzzah touching it. Well, that's when they moved the tabernacle to Jerusalem. And then later, after David's death, Solomon built the temple around it, and they took down the ark and made a permanent building there in Jerusalem. Well, in Ezekiel's time, after they've been taken away to captivity, Ezekiel sees a vision of the wheel in the wheel with all the eyes looking and moving wherever it goes. And then he sees a vision of the glory of God, the Shekinah, the glory, the visible symbol of God's presence, leave the temple and leave the Ark of the Covenant, go up to the corner of the temple. It stayed there for a moment, and then it went away. This was a shocking vision to Ezekiel. In fact, he's trying to tell you in the way he talks about it that this was something that he couldn't hardly bring himself to tell the people. They were in captivity. They were in Babylon. And God gives him this vision. He has to go tell the people that God sent the vision, that he's left the temple. He's not there anymore. And this would have been the most shocking thing you could tell an Israelite at that time, that God had left his presence. But he was telling them, you have sinned so badly, you have broken my covenant so badly that I am leaving there and I'm fixing to destroy it. That's how badly you sinned. I'm going to destroy that temple. You're off in Babylon. Imagine being a long way from home and your house burning down. That's almost worse than being there when it happens. You see.
Mine did.
Yeah, and so, yeah, and it's a shocking thing that you can't even get back to it. They couldn't even go back to fix it. But now later God lets them go back and rebuild it. But this is the message of this place. We're off the track here, but go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, God said that he preferred the tabernacle to the temple.
Probably so, yeah.
And so that's basically saying, I'd rather be with my people where they are.
So the reason that they had the tabernacle as opposed to a temple is when God first dwelt with them, they were in the wilderness wandering around. And so he was with wherever they went. The first thing they did was pick up that tabernacle, pack it up exactly like it was supposed to be, and it led the way, and they followed it because God was with them, leading them.
There's a Feast of Tabernacles, but not the temple.
What's that?
There's a Feast of Tabernacles, but there's no feast for the temple.
Yes, yes, that's right. And tabernacle means God is dwelling with. So there's a Feast of Tabernacles that they dwelt with. And so then later he basically, with the temple, I think he's saying, I'm in this place, you're settled in this land, this is your land, and I'm going to be with you here permanently, as it were. And he intended to be. So in any event, get my hearing aid where I can hear your questions better. Yeah.
I had always thought the vision was one of communication, like you said, back and forth between God. I also thought the location was primarily emphasized by man. That God didn't have much to do with the location, because not only was it the place they set up the tabernacle later, but the tabernacle was moved. It was also the place where they set up the golden calf in the kingdom of Israel.
Right.
So it was used for...
That's why Jeroboam did that.
Yeah, that's why he did that. And
But-
it seems to me that the location was more to do with man than it was with God.
Right, this is not the same as, seems like later Zion, not even not Jerusalem, but even then Zion becomes very special to God. But all of it is a representation of God dwelling with his people in the church as a body. But this is the prototype, the very raw figure of this ladder here. Anyway, dreams. We dream in symbols, and some dreams are meaningless, other dreams have symbols. And I thought it was interesting to read a commentator connect up the rocks of the place where he's building the little place where he's going to put his head, and then the ladder that he dreams about. You ever done that? Do something and then dream about some version of that while you're asleep? This is the way we do it, and maybe that's what happened. That's what happened here. Of course, God was behind all of it. Now then, so he wakes up. He woke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord's in this place. This is the gate of heaven. And I showed you the pictures. And now then, verse 18, and we're in chapter 28. This is Genesis 28. Then I don't have it at the bottom. Then Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put in his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city had been Luz previously. So it was near the city of Luz. And so now the city that's there becomes Bethel. He was outside the city, but they're saying this city's name. Now, when it says it became, but the name of the city has been Luz, he called it that, and later the Jews called it that, but the people who lived there still called it Luz. L-U-Z, Luz. That's what the people there called it. Later on it's going to be changed. When the Israelites capture this land, it's going to be changed. Then Jacob made a vow. This is the first vow in the Bible. It's not a vow like we think of, but if God will be with me and keep me in this way that I'm going and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, and that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up as a pillar shall be God's house. And all of you shall give me, all that you shall give me, I will surely give you a tenth to you. This is not a, if God will do it, then I'll make a bargain with God. This isn't a bargain. I think the old commentators are right when they say you should read the word if here as since. Since you've been with me and you show me a vision and you've told me you're going to be with me, since that is true, then I'm going to serve you. And he's expecting God to do this. He has faith that God will do this. And there are, in Greek, for example, now this is in Hebrew. In Greek, you have four conditions. Conditions are expressed in four. And so the if-then can be four ways. And they call them classes of conditions. And it's been 50 years since I studied it in detail, so forgive me, but I don't even remember all four of them. But one of them is if as in fantasy. You know, if frogs have wings, blah, blah, blah. You know. So it's a fantasy, if. We use this kind of thing all the time. If the Dolphins win the Super Bowl. You know, it's a fantasy thing. Then you have some conditions are since. You know, that's the fourth class of condition in Greek, meaning we're saying if in the sense of since I believe this. If I believed that such and such, then I would do this. Well, we obviously do believe that, so then we do believe that. You know. so he means it. So this is true of different language. I think that's what's going on here. I don't think this vow is a bargain with God. I knew, a person that, was it your sister that said that she bought a car? Now we're talking 50 years ago again, and she made a vow to God that if God would keep her car from breaking down and get her to work every day, she would never take the car to a bar or anything like that. Am I wrong about this memory? I'm correct. Okay. Well, now what happens when the car breaks down? See, when you make vows like that, you make bargains with God, it's a very bad thing. I do not believe in doing this. I do not believe in doing this because God and Satan just don't respect that.
Yeah, but Mike isn't making
Okay.
a bargain with God like testing God.
Well, sometimes it is testing him. That's the point. That's why I don't think God respects this.
That's why I think bargains are bad things.
So when the car is going to break down, and you are going to then be, if God lets the car break down, now you're free from your vow. He broke his end. Now I'm free of my end.
But if God lets the car break down, they ain't going to the bar anyway.
I know, but I'm going to go to the bar. I'll get me a new car and go to the bar. I don't forget the bargains with God.
Anyway.
Huh?
God wins anyway.
Maybe it breaks down in front of the bar. But it's just a bad deal. You can think to do this kind of thing. It doesn't work right. It's not our place to do this. To make now, we should just tell God, I'm not going to go to the bar, and then God blesses us or not. Sometimes He doesn't bless us for that. Sometimes we get tempted to do that. I'm just throwing out a poor example, but that's one that came to mind. But there are many people who take these kind of vows, as it were, and God doesn't work that way. He's not a machine that you plug in the numbers, you get the other numbers out the other side. That's the point I was trying to make in a sermon last week a little bit. All this stuff that we see that seems so almost bizarre, it's because it's not just logic. There's a real living being in the universe that we can't see named Satan who's involved in this. It's a person. And people are unpredictable and they don't operate by mathematical formulas. So we think it's all a matter of logic and this and that. And the logical fallacy here is the slippery slope fallacy. Do you really think that the devil cares about whether he adheres to the slippery slope fallacy or not? It's a person. You don't care about slippery slopes. We talk about this logic stuff and all these but God and Satan don't operate in that world, neither do you, really. But political commentators do, because they like to be able to figure things out. But there's more to it than that. We're dealing with an evil person, not a human, evil person in the universe, and we've got to remember that. He delights in the things he does and changing them up and fooling people. So don't make these bargains. Anyway, I'm off the subject.
Satan is a master at deception.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Part of his deception is you think you get it all figured out, and then he throws you a curve. Now what are you going to do?
Well, he would use a little bit of truth to throw in there to make that
Well, sure.
deception good.
Always some truth in there. I don't know if I've ever expressed my greatest fear out loud. As they say, I'm not superstitious, I'm only a little stitious. But some of you will recognize that. But Satan can't read my mind, but he can watch what I say and do. And so be careful about all these big promises. Be careful of all the big promises you make with your mouth. Because God and Satan both hear that. And both of them are okay with testing you. Both of them are fine with putting you to the test. They don't have any. God has no problem allowing Satan to put you to the test. It's okay with him. That scares me, as I've told you many times. But it's true. Huh? Well, yeah, I'm saying he has no problem with this. So don't think that because you're a Christian, nothing bad will ever happen to you, and you can just say whatever you want to with your mouth. Be careful about what you say and what you do, because Satan and God are both watching. And I say things all the time that I wonder, okay, that's going to come back and bite me. We know this. And I don't mean that in a superstitious way, but I mean that for wise, you live long enough, you realize, when does your car break? Okay, when does your car break down? Probably right after you begin break. Boy, this has been the best car I've ever owned. Never breaks down at all. That's when your car's going to break down. Yes, Doug. I don't know why that is.
I can't remember exactly how it goes, but isn't there a scripture that says, God is not tempted, neither does he tempt any man?
Yeah, James 1. God is not tempted by evil, neither does he tempt any man. But that chapter, but the word tempt there in Greek, Doug, it's interesting about that word. I got a little book written on this, never had published it. The word tempt and try and test are exactly the same word in Greek. In the original language, testing and tempting are the same thing. God tests us. He doesn't try to get us to do wrong. He tests us to see what we'll do. Satan is doing what he does to try to get us to do wrong, to tempt us to do wrong. And there's a difference in that, in motivation, and in other ways I probably couldn't understand if even God explained it. But God is not trying to get you to do wrong. Satan is. God's trying to see how you're going to react to it. And the only way he knows, only way you know, is by having the test put in front of you. So I've come to the conclusion it's just best to be very weak, because if you're weak, God won't let you be tempted above what you're able. So it's best all to just be real weak and sissy and afraid all the time, and that'd be the best thing. Then God won't put you any hard tests. I don't believe that really. It seems to be the way we live. The weaker person. Well, who gets the benefit in our society most of the time? We think the weak people do. How's that work out? How's that working out for us? Anyway, but in reality, the strong get the benefit. We like to think it's the weak. So Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. I'm going to blow your mind. I think they're called Orientals. They live in the east. But anyway, we won't go there. And he looked and saw a well in the field. And behold, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of that well they watered the flocks, and a large stone was on the well's mouth. So they had dug a well, usually a pit, either round or squared off. They dug a pit down till they found water. They put mortar and bricks or whatever they could find on the sides of it to keep from caving in. So it was always water at the bottom, and they often had a way to get water out of the bottom of it, hooked up there. And in this case, to keep stuff from falling in it, either people from using it who didn't have a right to it, they put a big flat stone on the top of it. Now all the flocks would be gathered there, and they would roll the stone from the well's mouth, water the sheep, and put the stone back into place on the well's mouth. And Jacob said to them, "My brethren, where are you from?" And they said, "We are from Haran." And then he said to them, "Do you know Laban," or Laban? I got to remember how to pronounce these names. "The son of Nahor." Who is Laban, the son of Nahor? Why did he ask this? You know the story? Abraham's brother. Laban is a relative of his. Laban is Jacob's uncle. Laban is Rebekah, his mother's father, from the previous story. So he asked about his uncle, because he knows he lives around there somewhere. And they said, "We know him." And so he said to them, "Is he well? Is he even alive?" And they said, "Well, he is well. And look, his daughter Rachel's coming with the sheep." So in fact, right there is his daughter Rachel. She's bringing the sheep. And then he said, "Look, it is still high day. It is not time for the cattle to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go feed them." So he's saying, you should get these sheep back to the pasture, in the middle of the day like this. And they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together and they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. Then we can water the sheep." So they all would gather their animals up around this well, distance from each other, and then they would roll the stone away, and then they would all water their flocks, and they'd go back to where they were. Now, while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter, she was not at home checking her Instagram feed. She was actually out doing something productive. Imagine that for a young lady. Imagine that. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother. So he was so moved by this, he physically himself moved this stone. I think it's trying to tell you, this is a big man, a strong man, even though he hung around the house with his mother. Apparently he's big enough to move this, and they were waiting for other people to come and do it. But was Jacob a guy that sat around and waited all the time on other people? Not exactly. He'd never shown that characteristic. He was active. And Jacob kissed Rachel, not in a romantic kiss, but as a relative, and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that this is always a way to make a good impression on a girl. Go up and kiss her and start crying. Some of you young men ought to try that sometime. It'll work out. I'm sure it'll work out real well for you. But anyway, and Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rebekah's son. And so she ran and told her father. Then it came to pass when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. So he told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. Once he heard the stories and asked him questions, he really believed it. And so he stayed with him for a month. And so Laban said to Jacob, because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be? I want you to serve me, stay here. I want you to work for me, but can't do it for nothing. Laban is shrewd. Be careful, people like him. But anyway, so Laban had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate or weak, it says in the King James, but Rachel's were beautiful of form and appearance. Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Eyes that weren't pretty were not a good attribute for women of that age, because that's pretty much what they could show people. Not just the eyes, but the eyes were important. What does Maybelline, just the one company, bring in $1 billion a year in eye makeup? It's nothing trivial. So we still have this thing about weak eyes today. So what it's saying here in a delicate way is that Leah was not very attractive, but Rachel was attractive. Sometimes you shake up the parents' genes, all the pretty genes get mixed together, both daughters are pretty. Sometimes you shake it up and they all go to one side or the other of the jar. So that's what happened here. Leah's eyes were delicate. And now Jacob loved Rachel. Now there's a shock. He likes the pretty one. And he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. Now, let's just zoom ahead a little bit in time. Which one of these two women is a better woman, in my opinion, of the two women? Leah. It's always the ugly one. Once again, God's sense of humor is just, The Bible doesn't call her ugly, but she wasn't as pretty as her sister. And that's a problem for young ladies, a problem for brothers who aren't handsome or strong as their other brothers. But that's why I got a chip on my shoulder. I'm the shortest of all my brothers. I'm the oldest, but I'm the shortest. It's not fair. Anyway, as far as character goes, I don't think Rachel was any great shakes. But that's true for beautiful women today. It really is true a lot of times. Because if you're got long legs and you're blonde and blue-eyed and all that, rosy lips, nobody makes you do much in life. You get an easy pass all the way through, a lot of the time. But if you're not, sometimes you have to develop character by being disappointed, by not getting your way, by having to work hard, by having life go against you, and this is how you develop good character. So God evens it out. He works it out differently. And you have a better chance of attracting a good husband, a good mate, if you have good character in the long run than you do if you're beautiful. We don't think about that. Who was? Rachel did work. I will give her that. She was a worker. And so this is good. This is a good thing. So I'm not saying she was a bad person. I'm saying Leah, even though she was unattractive compared to her sister, was at least as good a woman, if not more so. And so you have to look at more than just, I think looks are important. Very few of us select mates that we don't find attractive on some level. That's just not the way we're built, and there's good reasons for that. It makes us all want to be attractive. But the other side is that there's more to it than that. More to a marriage, more to life than that. All right. So he says, I'll work 7 years. If Judy's father had said that to me, I'm not sure what I would have done. So I have to think about that. We'll just leave the class right there, and I'll think about that for a week. And you all are laughing like you would have necessarily take that bargain. Okay.